Hi, welcome to this lesson on statistics regression. Let's have a look at grouped data. So we will often work with data in a grouped setting. That means we will count how many data points lie in some given interval. We can use what we call a cumulative frequency graph or ogive curve to visualize the spread of the data and draw statistical conclusions from this graph. So let's have a look at this example. We have marks for a maths test that is out of 50. So you can see the intervals here. People that got marks between 0 and 10. Notice the inequality signs. We're including 0, but we are not including 10. Similarly, between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, 30 and 40, 40 and 50. So those are the ranges or intervals for our group data. And on this table here, you have the number of learners that are within that specific interval. So the number of learners that scored between 0 marks and 10 marks are 12 learners. Within that same class, the people that got between 10, including 10, but less than 20 out of 50, that was 17 of the learners, and so on. The cumulative frequency is an additional column in this table which tells us how many students were in this survey. So there were 12 in this interval, 17 in the next interval, so you add, so 12 plus 17 gives you 29. Then from 17, you're going to add another 25 to give you 54. From that 54, you're going to add another 21 to give you 75. And then lastly, you add the last 5 to give you 80. So this tells us there were 80 students in total in that classroom. There are no overlaps between these numbers, because someone out of the 25 that got between 20 and 30 can't also get something between 40 and 50. They've already got their mark. Okay, so there's no overlap between the intervals. Okay, now the ogive curve for the following data would be as follows. So the ogive curve, how we would set it out, on your x-axis, this is usually the intervals that you're looking at. And on the y-axis, this will be your cumulative frequency. So this is why we call it a cumulative frequency graph or an ogive curve. And that is mainly because the data points that we are plotting here are going to be the intervals. Okay, so you can see from 0 to 10, it starts at 0. We call this the ground point. Okay, it starts at 0 in this example. And might not necessarily start at 0. So wherever it starts, just note that is your starting interval. And you can see between 0 and 10, we have 12 learners. So how do I indicate that? The cumulative frequency is going to be the y values on the ogive curve, and your x intervals are going to be the intervals in the table. So you look at the endpoint 10 and you look at the cumulative frequency 12. So that first coordinate here is 10, 12. Next, you look at the endpoint here, which is 20, and the cumulative frequency is 29. So at 20 here, you get 29. So 20, 29. Similarly, 30, and it's going to give you 54. So at 30, you have it over there. It's going to give you 54 as the coordinate. And then you're going to have 40 here as your endpoint, 75. So at 40, 75, that's that coordinate over here. And then lastly, 50 and 80. So 50 and 80. Now we can draw a lot of statistical conclusions from this ogive curve. For example, this last value, the cumulative frequency, that tells you the total number of participants in the study. In this case, 80 learners that were looked at for their marks. All right, what other information can we draw from this graph? We can actually find the median value. So the median value, your quartile 2, is you look at your cumulative frequency and you half it. So in this case, 40. And what you'll do is you will go to your ogive curve and see where it hits 40 and then bring it perpendicularly down to the x-axis. So what we say is that the median value Q2 is somewhere between 30 and 20. And we can see it's almost part way. So we could say that Q2 is approximately 25. So that is your quartile 2 value. You can do a similar thing for quartile 1 and quartile 3 by looking at a quarter of 80, which is 20. You can find your quartile 1 data there. It looks like it's 15. Similarly, 60 would be your quartile 3 value. You can go onto your ogive curve. It looks like it's maybe 33, for example. And your max is 80, or your maximum mark would be 50. Your lowest mark would be 0. Okay, so again, the ogive curve is just a geometrical way to represent group data that makes sense to us, and then we can read off statistical conclusions based off of that ogive curve. Awesome. I'll see you in the next one.